Hi everyone, and welcome to another Sketchbook Sunday episode. Today I'm going to be showing you how to paint easy watercolor flowers, but specifically I'll be showing you two techniques to paint carnation flowers. So to start out, I am using a round brush, specifically a size 14 round brush by Grombacher. I really love their line. I have 3 of their brushes and I'm really happy with them. And if you want to add them to your collection, I have included the link in the description where you can purchase them. So for this first technique, honestly, this was my first time trying to paint carnation flowers, and I really like how it turned out. So basically, you're just going to paint a very rough circle, but the trick is to make the edges very sharp and pointy, sort of like porcupine-ish. And you can achieve this by angling the end of your brush towards the outside of the circle and sort of bobbing the end point up and down just to create that spiky look, because if you look at a picture of a carnation on the internet, you'll see that the edges are actually quite sharp and rough. They're not really perfect, so if you want that classic carnation look, then just make sure you add those sharp bits on the edges. While we're waiting for the first technique to dry, the second technique is much faster and easier in my opinion. You just basically create a rough jagged line in the shape of a circle, and you just keep repeating that same technique until you fill in the entire circle. And you can even add some V-shapes to make it look like there are additional layers coming from the bottom of the flower. So moving back to that first technique, you're going to repeat the same process that we used for the first layer, but there are 2 key differences. The first difference is that you're going to be using a more pigmented either color or shade of the same color, and this is because we want to achieve that layered look. And then the second thing is that you are not going to be creating a perfect circle for subsequent layers. It's more going to be like oval or even diamond shaped, just sort of all over the place and not perfect. And this is because if you look at a picture of a real carnation, you'll see that as you get closer to the center, the more disfigured and shriveled the center looks, and the way to achieve that look is to make sure that you're not painting perfect circles. I also added some greenery, and you'll see me painting several different green leaves just to fill in the white space, but it also just makes any floral painting look really nice. So the other thing I did to make the first technique look a little bit more realistic was I bordered the edges with a darker pigment, and if you again look at a real carnation, you'll see that the edges are a little bit darker. So if you just take sort of an in-between shade and just very lightly outline the first layer that you put down, it will make it look a little bit more realistic. And you can see me actually doing that on most of the layers that I put down. And it looks so much better than it did at the beginning. And again, the closer you get to the center, the more intense you want your pigment to be. And you can even repeat that same sort of technique that we used for the second carnation flower that I painted, or rather the third one. You can use that same technique in the center of the first technique just to bring out more of an intense center and make it look super shriveled like I was talking about earlier. So here's sort of a more close-up version of exactly what I was doing. Actually, this is the same technique that I used for the second carnation technique. The only difference is I decided to slap on some very light pigment as a background just to see if that would add any more detail to the carnation. You can choose to do this or not, but I find that if you start layering your pigmented borders before the base layer has dried, it adds this really nice effect. Usually you don't want your watercolors to bleed, but you'll see me doing this shortly here. If the base is still wet, the border sort of bleeds onto the rest of the flower, and I don't know, it's just this really fluid gradient that I really like the look of. But again, it's not 100% necessary. I just wanted to see what it would look like if I was to add a very light background before I painted on the details. Also, I just want to add a disclaimer in case anyone is weirded out. I know that I have a bunch of cuts on my fingers, and it's because I rock climb, and frequently when I miss the rock or I hit the wall, my knuckles scrape against it, so that's where all my cuts are from. I apologize if that ruins the aesthetic of the video, but a girl has her hobbies, so that's the reason for that. So I skipped some of the flowers because I think you got the point after the first several that I painted. I ended up continuing on with that second technique that I showed you for the rest of the flowers simply because it was faster. And you can see me adding some more leaves now just to fill up all the white space and add a little bit more color to contrast the pink and purple and red shades that I used. And you can even see me now using a permanent marker or a Sharpie or some sort of fine tip black marker and adding just a few details to add, I guess, accents to the flowers and the leaves. And I didn't do this for every single flower and every single leaf, but I think if you add a little bit of black accent to the odd leaf and flower, it adds just some more complexity. I love the look of black accents, so I frequently add them to my paintings, but this step is absolutely not necessary. It's just something that I chose to do. And that's it. Please don't forget to hit the like button on this video if you found it helpful, and also consider subscribing to my channel for future watercolor tutorials.